Hi, this is Vision, and this is going to be a short guide on warding. So, first off, we're going to be starting on the blue side. This is mainly just going to be warding for bot lane. So, first off, in a certain situation, you'll find yourself on blue side, you'll probably be shoved in, and so the warding patterns in this situation are obviously going to be different compared to if you were shoving them in or if the lane is even. So the first thing is kind of the question is, should I pink this tri brush? And most likely the answer is no. So if you already have a pink in here, it's fine. The issue is it's most likely going to be contested and can easily be taken. Obviously, if you're shoved in, you don't really have necessarily the resources to protect this. It is a good jungle path for your jungler. Um, However, their jungler most likely will have the opportunity to take this. You kind of risk yourself. You kind of put yourself in risk if they to try and protect it if their bot lane goes, and you don't obviously know where their jungler is because you may not have gotten wards deep in this jungle, right? And so there is a possibility of them, you know, baiting you, baiting you to clear this and resulting in you maybe dying and them getting a dragon or first turret. So where you want to put your pink instead is either in this brush behind your tower. This is really nice for giving your jungler a decent optimal path and also preventing the possibility for you to obviously be dove. So you'll see if, let's say, a mid laner, say, oh, let's say the mid laner he roams bottom. It might be a little bit too late, um, but you'll obviously see if he's behind here, or if, let's say, the jungler was behind here. So what that can obviously do is allow you the opportunity to either get out of there, allow your jungler to set up a counter gank, or top laner to, you know, result in a TP. So this ward is pretty nice for allowing your jungler the opportunity to counter gank if they were to shove in and them not knowing. This also gives probably the best coverage for preventing a dive if the jungler did come and try to ward this brush for their top laner to join. It would obviously be not impacted, and you could be able to get out of there. The other place is actually going to be in this brush, the entrance to your jungle. Now, this is a really good ward for seeing the movement of the enemy mid laner. So you're going to see his pathing if he does come bottom. A lot of mid laners on specifically red side may path towards here to get the blast plant to go over the wall and then potentially dive or come around. It's a little bit safer because this try is going to be potentially warded, so gives them less chance of being caught by a ward, and because of that, most likely they're going to path through here instead of just straight on here. What this does is this obviously gives you the information, so you can obviously prevent the dive or prevent them from ganking you. Um, this also gives information to help your jungler. If, let's say, their jungler goes to contest the Raptors, your jungler will have the information where the enemy jungler is and also have the ability to counter gank if he does see him pathing bottom. This is also just a really nice and safe ward and gives your mid lane the ability to roam and match, and your jungler to have a safe presence in his jungle without the overall assumption that they're warding up all here. Just a little bit safer. Um, so besides that, you're going to be wanting to ward a few key locations. So the first one is going to be in the lane brush. Now, you might want to say, oh, if they're going to lane gank, shouldn't I try and get a deeper ward? And it'll also result to help maybe my top laner to TP. That may be true. However, for in this certain situation, we're under the assumption that you can't get that ward. You haven't been able to reset the lane and get an award and then let them shove you in, resulting in a play from your team. So this is just kind of in this certain situation, we're kind of just assuming they shove you in. It's kind of frozen at your turret. They're maybe they're hard shoving and resetting the lane, and there's not much you can do, right? They're pressuring you pretty hard, and you can't get a deep ward. However, what you can do is you can try and ward this brush. What this is going to do is it's going to prevent the typical potential lane gank that's potentially going to happen here, where the enemy jungler is going to obviously path bottom, come in here, and then you're going to see him as soon as they hit here. Most likely the support in him will be sitting in this brush, and they'll try to get a pick on either your AD carry or the support, and then results in either a first turret or potentially just go and get a dragon. So this ward is going to be very key in preventing the lane gank, and also just giving information on if their support is roaming or not. Because if, let's say, their support goes in this brush, there's a very high possibility, if this wasn't warded, that their AD carry could, pressure, if he's playing like Caitlyn, pressure you pretty hard, and then their support could actually just straight up path out, come here, come mid lane, and then result in a mid lane gank, and that would heavily influence this mid laner to get XP advantage, and also could potentially then come bottom, and then it could snowball out of control. So the idea is to prevent you guys from getting ganked, and also prevent the possibility for the support to have the ability to roam here, right? So the next ward is you're going to want to ward your try. This is just generally good because you obviously get the information where the jungler is if he were to try and path through there. But you're also getting the information on where the enemy is warding, right? See, whenever they're warding a brush, you can typically see it, especially if it's warded. And so because of this, when they ward this brush, you'll be able to let your jungler know. So either you can give them the information so you can path, a different path, maybe path around to river, or maybe path in a lane gank. This is also just useful because if there were a pink here, it would obviously mean you want to protect that, and they're not going to obviously place a pink here because it's a very offensive spot, and so there is a 50-50 contest. There's like a high chance that they're going to contest this brush, right? And because of that, there's no reason for them to place a pink because you're just going to take that, and they can't protect it. It's on your side of the map, right? So in the next situation, we're going to switch it up, and for blue side, we're going to be even in the lane. So for blue side, when you're even in lane, there's a few decent wards. So of course, first you're going to want to pink your tri brush. This is just generally good. Obviously good to give the information to know whether the enemy is going to be getting a gank behind you or not. Typically having this pink over here is really good to prevent that. However, it's typically fine to have your pink here, at least one. Obviously you have two champs, so you have the possibility of your AD carry pinking here and the support pinking either here or here. So yeah, but if your AD is not pinking, I would just suggest pinking your tri brush. So next is you want to get a lane ward if you can. All this is going to do is, depending on the support matchup, is obviously going to prevent them from potentially winning the trades if they're playing like a poke reliant champion like Nami, Karma, for example. But it would also prevent the possible initiation from like a Thresh, Blitzcrank, Alistar. And this would also give you the possibility to be more even in trades, and also prevent the jungler from lane ganking, and give a possible teleport ward for your top laner or mid. This also just gives you information on where the support is. So in the same circumstance, if their support wasn't here for some reason, if he was roaming or backed, you will know that, and you'll be able to initiate on their AD. And this also gives the ability for the support not to do the typical range tactic of using the brush as a way to prevent creep aggro when they auto your AD carry. So your next ward, you typically want to get a ward in this river. Warding here isn't really generally that great. obviously because it doesn't give you a lot of time to react. So you're going to want to ward a little bit deeper. And all this is going to do is obviously allow you to get information on the jungler's pathing. This is a decent ward because you can also see if they path towards dragon or towards up and to your mid laner. So this will slightly help them out. And another example of this is if your jungler can actually get scuttle, that also works fairly well. So the other ward you're gonna want is actually to ward over this part of the wall, not ward on top of the blast plant, because this doesn't give you enough information. You will actually be able to see the blast plant even though if it's up here, but the difference is if, let's say you were to ward here, if you were to ward just over the blast plant, you would end up seeing the jungler path right when he got in this area, whereas you can, in the other situation, you can actually see you can actually see him a lot sooner, and you can also see where he passed along here, right? So if it was way in here, you'd only see him for a second, and you might not be able to get the information. You'll clearly see him path towards mid or bottom, right? All right. So for now, when you're shoving in, their bot lane, there are also a few wards you want to try and get. Now, typically, you're going to keep your pink to your tri pinked still. That's just generally pretty good. Now, there's a few different things you can do. You can either result in a little bit deeper of a ward. So that would mean getting either a super deep ward like here, or getting a ward on their blue buff. Which both of these, this information is really nice because you see where he's pathing his jungle, but the blue buff is generally good information because obviously you get to see where the jungler moves after the 7 or so minute mark when he's taking his second blue or giving it to the mid laner. So the next ward, you're going to also want to ward here again just to see the blast plant, which is kind of why this ward right here, if they're like really close, is kind of pointless, but doing like this and then like that, typically if you're hard shoved in, this is like a pretty decent setup. The wards are kind of on top of each other, but this does give you a lot of time to react, and it generally means the only way to get to bot lane is through a lane gank, or to path through here, but you'll actually see them on the blast plant, or if they path around, and it will give you a lot of time to react. So the only bad problem is if they do result in a long-term pathing, which this would prompt your AD carry to pink here, and would prompt for you to hopefully pink here or here, which would give you more information, or if your jungler can pink there, that works, or mid lane. So yeah. Now we're going to switch over and talk about red side wards. So in the situation that you are going to be shoved in like this, similar situation on the opposite side, you're going to want to try and deny this ward, the pink here. All this does is make it so they can't get a lot of information on this brush, and it always kind of makes them have to assume the jungler could be there, right? It makes it so they obviously can't ward there, and if they were to throw a ward over like this or this to try and get information on the jungle, it will actually be cancelled out, and they're basically forced to do this ward, which is fine, but they won't be able to get the information over here. This also will be heavily protected. They can't really get in here, and if they do decide to dive you, you do have the information on it. Now the next ward um, in this situation is kind of optional, because if you are in risk, you believe you're going to die, you can actually throw a ward over this wall just to get a little bit more information. You can kind of see where the mid laner or jungler is pathing if they do try and dive you bottom, and this will give you time to try to counter that or give up your tower. Now, in the same circumstance as bot lane there, you do want to try and ward this lane brush to prevent the lane gank and give information on the support. Um, and you do have one more ward. In this circumstance, it can be slightly difficult if you're obviously shoved in. If you can actually board this brush just to get somewhat of more information. But you can also, if you can, get a river brush ward just to generally see where the jungler is, because when you are shoved in, they do have the possibility to do dragon, right? So this would kind of prevent that. Now, if the lane is actually even, the wording is going to change. So typically they are actually going to place a pink ward right here. So what this does is it kind of changes up how you have to ward. So typically what you're going to want to do is you're actually going to want to ward kind of a river. It's a river brush, but it's not really that deep. And mainly all this is doing is giving you a little bit extra information, whether they're pathing straight from Tri or from river. So it's kind of doing two purposes, and it's also out of range of this pink ward. Now, your other ward is going to want to be in their lane brush, so you can see where the support is and prevent that typical lane gank. And your last ward, it can depend. You can actually get a super deep ward if you can. This one is not actually seen by the pink ward, and so it is generally in a good spot for a teleport. You can also do that for a deep ward. You can also get wards towards their side. You could also just get a ward on your Tri and pink ward here or pink ward here. So this typically will give you quite a bit of information, and you should be able to prevent them from ganking you to an extent. So next situation is if you are shoved in, and a lot of time this will result in them having the ability to obviously gank you. So typically you're going to still want to do this ward, but you may want to get a deeper ward over towards this side, just to give the information on the mid laner. You have the possibility of clearing their pink here and either warding the Tri, or dropping a deep ward within here or here to get your top laner to TP. And again, you have a little bit more flexibility with your pink ward. You can pink ward in this brush. You can pink ward in your actual lane brush to try to get your jungler to come and for lane gank. Or if you have the ability to roam, in this circumstance, you can pink ward offensively, either in their jungle or in your river, and potentially gank mid lane. So these are typically the most common wards. Obviously, there's a little bit of flexibility with them, but this is kind of typically what you'll see, and hopefully this can help you out.